Every board was broken. There was nothing salvageable. And some of the pieces of the fence were even found 15 feet into the neighbor's property. The car drove through and continued carrying some of the debris with it.
Please raise your right hand.
Web developer John King is suing a neighbor for driving into his fence. Defendant Jessica Condon says he was late and leaving town.
Plaintiff, you say that the defendant is responsible for destroying a fence at your residence. Is that right?
Yes.
Struck it with his motor vehicle and fled the scene. Where do you live, sir?
In Southeast Portland, Oregon.
All right. Now, you own a home or you're renting a home?
Owner.
Okay, you're owner. Now, would you please describe to me what got damaged?
Sure. There's an alleyway adjacent to the back of my property, and I have a large cedar fence, 6-foot cedar fence, about 45 feet long, and that entire cedar fence was destroyed.
You have a picture?
Absolutely.
Madam Sonia, if it would be so
striking
kind,
the damage is total.
Okay, let's see.
Every board was broken. There was nothing salvageable. Even the shrubberies that grew beneath it were completely destroyed. That was where the fence was, right there. And some of the pieces of the fence were even found 15 feet into the neighbor's property. Like the car drove through and continued carrying some of the debris with it.
Now, what is your estimate for repair of the fence? Or have you already effected the repairs? Or replacement?
I have an itemized list of the estimate.
How is it that you determined that the defendant had something to do with this? Please tell me what you did.
Well, the next morning, my wife and I woke up, and that was when we discovered that all this damage had happened.
Baby, you better come out here. We seem to have had something. You didn't hear any strange high winds blowing last night or anything out of the ordinary.
I think we were out to dinner the evening before when it happened in the evening. And I was cleaning up the rubble, and underneath the debris, I found a side emblem off of a vehicle. And I didn't instantly recognize this ornament logo. So I did some research online and found that this is an international harvester.
Yes, and they usually
so then
make farm equipment, but they make what?
Scouts, the International Harvester Scout. So I searched the neighborhood looking for a Scout that would have an emblem like this. Didn't find anything, but a month later, I happened to be driving through my neighborhood, and I pulled up alongside this Scout, and I recognized the emblem on the side of the car. So I hopped out and looked on the other side, and on the other side of the car, it was missing its emblem, and there were scratches all down the side. The rearview mirror was twisted off. I have photos of the vehicle that I found.
Miss Sonia, please.
Good work. Good work. And I went home, got my digital camera, my brother, who was at my house, and we came back and took those photos.
I say, Holmes, brilliant deduction, quite brilliant work there.
We'll be back with more Judge Joe Brown in a moment.
I searched all the popular websites at MySpace and Friendster and Craigslist. The most important thing I found was a photo on his MySpace account of him driving in the Scout.
Closed captioning sponsored by...
We're back with Judge Joe Brown. The plaintiff in this case says he quickly had to become a detective in order to figure out who mowed down his fence with a car. He says he found a vehicle emblem, researched it on the net, then drove the neighborhood to find a match on the defendant's vehicle. Let's take a look.
How did you fathom out that was in fact what you were looking at?
I didn't know who the owner of the vehicle was at this time. I just had a license plate. And
this is where it would have been affixed right here. Those are the affixed.
And the piece fit into those two holes, so I was pretty certain.
Aha, Watson, quite elementary. They fit, sir. Missing emblem, it fits.
I talked to a Portland police detective and tried to get him to give me the name of the registered owner. And after calling him 3 or 4 times and pestering him enough, he finally broke down and gave me the name of the vehicle's owner. And once I had the name was fairly unusual, so I was able to look online and found a number of things about this person online. I searched all the popular websites like MySpace and Friendster and Craigslist and found information on all those. The most important thing I found was a photo on his MySpace account of him driving in the Scout.
Let me see that.
I also used Google Maps to create an overhead aerial photo showing the probable path of the vehicle traveling south down the alleyway and the proximity of my house to the defendant's.
I say, let's see, we have portion of fence that was destroyed right there. Direct path.
About a block and a half away.
The home of the defendant. Now, let's go to the defendant. You've made out a prima facie case. Apparently, you've admitted this, and now explain yourself.
There was a big bush on the left side, so I slipped my front tire, accidentally into the ditch.
Into the ditch.
Yeah.
Into the fence.
Well, not yet.
Oh, there was more.
Well, trying to get out, I ended up moving, back and forth, and worked into the ditch a little. And at that point, I could have went and got my dad's truck and pulled it out, but I decided to try and pull forward and get out that way.
So you ran over his fence to get out of the ditch.
I was up against the fence trying to pull forward out.
So you ran through the fence to get out of your predicament.
He had to be intoxicated to do this much damage.
I was going to say, that seems to be a degree of inebriation here.
If he had knocked on my front door and come to me and said, look, I'm stuck on your fence, I would have volunteered to spend a Saturday afternoon and rebuild it and bury the hatchet. But he didn't.
What had you been drinking?
I hadn't been drinking.
Why'd you leave the scene?
I had a two-week job up in Washington.
So why didn't you come back?
The next morning.
Why didn't you come back?
I should have.
Yeah, but you didn't. Come on up, I want to hear from you. What do you got to say?
Yes, sir. Basically, the only thing I'd like to add to my brother's testimony, Judge, is two things. One, I'd just like to assert that I think my brother was conservative in the estimated damages in terms of labor. I think he gave a really fair price for the cost of the fence, as I've done a lot of carpentry work and helped him rebuild it.
You've given me a materials estimate. You have dumping fee, debris removal. You have fence post, hardware, nails, screws, 2x4 boards, cedar fence boards, etc.
And that last
concrete
item,
premix, replacing destroyed shrubbery or roses, etc. What you have put down there is that that's what you pay one workman. Did you put down here, let's see, a cost for waterproofing the boards, sealing them, painting them?
No, good point.
I think your estimate for fence post, hardware, nails, and screws is extremely conservative.
Agreed.
You haven't dealt with the fact that you're going to need fence post diggers to dig or rental on that. But you over here, what do you do?
Landscaping and carpentry.
It's ironic. It's ironic.
How coincidental.
would have been helpful.
Judge Joe Brown makes his ruling after this.
I think what you're asking for is entirely too conservative. You need another
Agreed.
500 on top of that at the very least. 1,600 would be more reasonable. Now, you win your case, so anybody think the manly thing to have done would have been to have stopped? After all, he and his neighbor just live on one street over from each other. Yes, if you do, no, if you don't.
Well done.
1,600 in court costs. Judgment accordingly.
Thank you.
Courtroom is now in recess. Gentlemen, exit straight ahead to your right.
The defendant in this case, not very apologetic about leaving the scene of his accident. He probably never imagined the tenacity of the plaintiff in this case. Some very clever investigative work. He wins, pays off. We'll be right back. We're back. A great example of how being proficient online can help stop a vandal in his tracks. This plaintiff was determined, and from MySpace to Google Maps, he was not giving up until he got his man. His man didn't seem sorry, but will pay.
Visit our website at judgejoebrown.com.